Yo, YouTube, what's going on? If you're having a hard time in Apex Legends winning your early game fights, you might be doing a few things wrong. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to succeed in your early game fights. So there's 5 main aspects of this video I want to touch on. The first one is landing. And we did go over landing in episode 1 of tips and tricks and how to get better at Apex Legends, so be sure to check that. The link will be below. Tip number 2 is going to be the importance of shields in an early game fight. Tip number 3 will be the best weapons you can pick up during the start of a game. Number 4 is going to be the positioning to give you the best chance at winning your fights. And tip number 5 is going to be to know the enemy's play style. So I already mentioned that in episode 1 we reviewed how to land and fly better, so be sure to check that out. In the previous episode, episode 2, we discussed the best legends for beginners, so also be sure to check that out. The link will also be below in the description. So I like to highlight a comment in every video to give back to the community that has been supporting me so graciously. Thank you so much. If you want your comment highlighted in my next video, drop a comment below and it might be featured. Today's comment comes from Don again. You make it look unfair for everyone you play against. Straight beast. Don, thank you so much for the comment and the continued support. I really appreciate that. As always, like the video if you want to support me, and drop a comment down below. Honestly, dropping a comment and liking the video is the best way for the video to get noticed and for me to get more attention. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We post videos about 3 times a week around here. So without any further ado, guys, let's get going. Here's 5 tips to help you win your early game fights in Apex Legends. So tip number 1 involves landing, and we covered this in episode 1, but again, you want to make sure you're landing on floor loot as much as possible and not boxes. You want to be able to see the loot you're landing on, not opening a box and hoping that you get something good. If you can see what you're landing on when you're flying in, you're going to be way better off than most people. The second point is your vantage point, and a little bit with your positioning. You want to land on loot that you know has a great vantage points for early on in the game. This means landing, knowing where the enemies are going to be, knowing that you have a better position than the enemies, and a great vantage point to either shoot down on them. So sometimes this means getting height on someone, landing above them, or landing where you know where someone's going to be coming around the corner. We will show an example of positioning later in the video. And of course, also covered in episode 1, you want to be landing and beating people as fast as possible to the ground to give you the most amount of time to loot and to prepare for that first fight to set yourself up for success. Tip number 2 is an obvious one, but one of the most crucial ones out of this list, and that's the importance of shields early game. If you just think about this mathematically for a second, everyone spawns in with 100 health. If you find a shield early game, say you get a white shield early game, you now have 150 health with your shields. This basically means you need to take 50% more damage than anyone else on the field right now if you get one right off the rip. While you can't always control what you're getting early game, but as soon as you get a weapon or even just a decent gun early on, you definitely want to go find a shield as quick as possible. Honestly, this is why if I see someone with a purple shield right off the spawn, I get extremely nervous usually, because I know I need to put a serious amount of bullets into them to down them early game. And a lot of the times people don't have good guns early game or guns with extended magazines like you would later game. This makes downing someone with a purple shield or even a blue shield early game extremely difficult. Tip number 3 is to know which weapons you want to look for in an early game fight. The guns that reign supreme at endgame, such as the R99 and Prowler, might not be the best choice for an early game fight. However, if you do find these guns, they're always going to be solid. Some of my favorite guns early game are the Alternator, the L-Star, the Flatline, the EVA 8, the Triple Take, and the Mastiff. The Alternator I like to take because it is a solid weapon early on. It has low recoil, shoots relatively slow, which isn't always what you want, but it's easy to aim and the bullet per damage is quite high on the Alternator. The second gun I always like to look for is the L-Star. And the L-Star to me is a sleeper. The L-Star you don't need to reload, so if you're controlling your shooting, swapping weapons and so on, you can do a lot of damage really easily. The third gun I like to take is the Flatline because it has solid recoil control. You don't need a barrel to have the same amount of recoil such as like an Alternator R99 or R301. The Flatline is solid right off the pickup off the spawn, and the Flatline is also great hipfire at close range, which can really shred people. The fourth, before we get to shotguns, is the Triple Take. Believe it or not, the Triple Take Sniper is one of the most underrated guns in the game. Not only can the Triple Take be great at shorter to medium ranges, it's also great in the really close-up fights. The Triple Take can act almost like a shotgun if you're hip firing it at close range. Then again, at medium range, the Triple Take can do high burst damage because you don't need the choke, and you can do almost 72 headshots on people pretty easily. And finally, I love taking an EVA 8 or a Mastiff early game. This is because these guns are super easy to use, they don't require a lot of ammo, and they do a lot of damage at close range in those early game fights. There's one thing that's consistent with all of these guns, and all of these guns are solid without attachments. Of course, attachments will make them better, but all of these guns can work really well early game without attachments. Obviously, if you find a magazine with an R99 and a Prowler, this would be amazing, but that always isn't the case. So you gotta use what you find, you gotta make something out of nothing. And don't let it beat you up too much if you fail early game using a gun you're not familiar with. The only thing you can do is to keep practicing with these guns. It can be difficult, and sometimes there is a such scenario as a no-win scenario. So always keep your head up and keep grinding. So our next tip is positioning. We briefly discussed this earlier in the video. Putting yourself in the proper position in an early game can really set you up for success, and you might not even realize you're doing something wrong. For this example, we're going to give you a little bit of an intro where I was landing at Sorting Factory. Right off the bat, you're going to notice that I'm landing over the Sorting Factory main building. I'm landing in the back, and I'm going to land on the doorway. Now, I'm doing this because I think I saw someone landing up top, so I didn't want to go there. And I think I also saw someone landing right through the middle of the whole building, and I don't want to do that. If I land in the middle of the building, it's going to get me completely exposed. Someone's going to be able to shoot me from up top, down the tracks, across the tracks, on the other side of the building. You know, there's just a lot of unknowns when you land in the middle of this Sorting Factory building. So I'm landing in the back doorway. You'll see here I'm going down. So now I'm going to freeze right here in the doorway. And I know there's no one behind me. So behind me is completely safe for the time being. And I know someone landed up in front of me up there in the middle of the tracks. So I know that's an area of danger. And on top of that, I know someone landed on the roof, which kind of means someone could be to my left, but you can also see that my teammate is up there to the left. So whoever did land up on the roof will probably be interested in my teammate rather than me. So right off the bat, I know there's really only two directions anyone can come from, and it's either straight up the middle or to the right. Now I know more than likely it's gonna be someone straight up the middle because they probably landed on one of the loot boxes there. And on top of that, I'm in an area where I know no one can really shoot me from above in this back hallway. I am breaking my one rule where I'm looting boxes, but honestly it's because my teammates were landing here and I didn't really have any other choice. But you will see I'll get a little bit lucky here, so let's keep going. So right away I'm ecstatic after opening this first box. I'm getting a blue shield and a blue helmet. Almost nothing better I could get in terms of shields and a helmet right away. Obviously purple, but this is great. And then I'm gonna open that second box and you're gonna notice I get an alternator and a flatline. So I'm feeling really good right now. Like, I'm ready to push everyone. I want to run over there and try to kill the enemies as soon as possible because I know I have a great loadout right now and I'm locked and ready to go, where they might not be quite as ready as I am. So I want to choose when to engage. I want to engage right now. I can already hear the Gibraltar running over to me. So I'm going to play a little bit safe around the corner here, wait for him to run at me. I'm going to completely destroy him. He's going to have no idea what happened to him. And right here, guys, that's the power of positioning. I set myself up by getting me into the right spot. I knew where the enemies were coming from, and I got a little bit lucky with the boxes, but that's just how a BR goes. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, and I win my gunfight right here. So our fifth and final tip is to know the enemy's abilities and the player's play style. This kind of takes time. You got to play more of the game to understand it. But you really want to know what all the legends can do, and that doesn't mean you need to play them all. You want to know what each legend is capable of doing so you can properly counter it in the moment of a fight. And also, you want to understand how the enemy is playing. Are they an aggressive player? Are they a passive player? Are they taking a lot of shots? Are they not shooting a lot? All these things can give you little cues into how they're playing, and you can properly counter them. If they're shooting a lot, it probably means they're an aggressive player. They're trying to get a pick on you. It also probably means they're a better player. Being aggressive is almost always better than being passive in Apex, especially with the way the movement is. Now, if they're being a passive player, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad player, but it could mean they're scared to do an engagement. They want to play back a little bit more. They want to wait for you to make the mistake. And that's okay too. You just need to understand what the enemy is trying to do. They might be trying to bait you if you're playing slow or if they're playing so. You never know. But you really want to analyze this in the heat of a gunfight, and you want to try to figure out what they're doing so you can properly counter it. Doing this will help set you up for success. And this is generally a guide for beginners, but this is something that I think you will have to just play the game more to understand more. So just get those hours in, practice, practice, practice. So there you have it. 5 tips for beginners or new players on how to win your early game fights. Please let me know if this video helped you in the comments below, and let me know what you'd like to see for episode 4 down there in the comments. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video. I don't plug it too often, but be sure to check out my Twitch channel. I do stream there almost daily. Peace out, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day.